I always wanted to find something I can believe in. I hope I'm religious, but I just never made myself believe in it. Well, I guess I try to understand Islam also. I think that religion probably makes a bit more sense to me than Christianity. I think if there's a God, they should be more abstract. So you agree there's something about God that's beyond human understanding, but it doesn't bother you that he actually has a son who has come to this earth in human form as Jesus. So Jesus is a Jew, straight, asexual man, possibly. And why exactly did God choose that form? It doesn't speak to everyone on earth, and that's not universal enough to me.
Hey, I just had a great conversation with a young Chinese man who was here, I think in UK initially for studies, but now he works here. He also happens to run a podcast about life in the UK, and so he might actually get me to speak on one of his episodes. We'll see about that. But anyway, good conversation. I ended up doing most of the talking. I think his position was a little bit skeptical, I think, about Christianity. He's learned about it a little bit in his university courses, but just a little bit standoffish. Some questions about knowing God, the uniqueness of Jesus in the context of the biblical stories, such thing. Pretty good questions though, but I think just maybe he was a little bit worried that I was going to try to preach to him and convert him, and so hopefully he didn't think that I was being too pushy. I'll try to answer his questions. You can see this for yourself. But anyway, I prayed for this young man. I did just impress upon him of the importance of faith matters, and our eternity matters, and what Jesus did for us as human beings, for everyone in the world. So have a look at it, tell me what you think, and see you in the next episode. God bless. Do you have any faith, any philosophy of life, any belief?
No,
No, you
no
don't?
belief at all.
No. Is that sort of, you come to this position like over time? Has it changed over time? Have you been in the past following something, maybe through your parents, or and then changed, or was it always like that for you?
I always wanted to find something I can believe in. I hope I'm religious, but I just never made myself believe in it.
Okay, when you say you hoped to, do you actually search? Did you search? Did you investigate? Did you try to research?
I guess I've done some courses in Christianity in uni, and I was trying to connect with the church, but I just don't buy it really. I can't persuade myself into it. I think it made my life easier if I can put my faith into something, but it just hasn't happened yet.
Got it. Okay, let me probe a little bit more. So on your the limited amount of time that I guess you had a chance to investigate, let's say Christianity, was it not convincing enough, or was it something that, like, you didn't find the kind of answers that you were looking for? Could you maybe explain a little bit more, like why that didn't satisfy your sort of search?
I just found it hard for totally surrender myself to a superior being, because that's the core of that religion.
It is, but interesting. I mean, it's not the only religion that speaks of it's not the only monotheistic religion. So Islam also believes it, Judaism believes monotheistic religion, Christian, these are the three sort of Abrahamic religions. But was it specific Christianity that you were sort of singling out, or did you just in general, you just don't understand, or you don't necessarily believe in a single kind of deity out there? Is that more the case?
Well, I guess I try to understand Islam also. I think that religion probably makes a bit more sense to me than Christianity, if
Interesting.
it's okay to say that, because it's more abstract and there's not that many images. I think if there's a God, they should be more abstract. But still, I think if there is God, there will be only one God. But don't know whether I'm making sense here.
Well, explain a little bit more. So, okay, so if there's a God, there must be only one. I agree with that because I think we know that different religions make different exclusive claims, right? So it cannot be both Islam and Christianity cannot be true at the same time, right? Because they make, even though they talk about a single God, the way they describe that God is different, exclusively so, right? Um, but then you say you agree with the concept that there must be one God, but you don't believe then the way he's being characterized, that he must be a little bit more abstract, that the more I'm just trying to verbalize what I think you are saying, but please correct me, right? Is it the more we try to be specific, the more we try to characterize the unknown, unknowable, the unknown, the more it sort of loses connection with you?
Exactly.
Why would that be the case?
I don't think God should have any human form, and we shouldn't be able to 100% understand them. It should have as little human interaction as possible.
Is that, and why do you think that is the case? Yeah, it's quite interesting position, right? Is it more on the philosophical way, like if we understand God, then that means he's not really God, because if we could understand him fully, then we would be effectively God? Is it more that kind of position, or is it something else?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, but let's now dwell a little bit deeper into the Christian sort of worldview, right? So the Christians believe that not necessarily that God is fully knowable, but that we can know him through the person of Jesus, right? So that if God were to be like us, if he were to be like us, he made himself known in the person of Jesus, who was in every way like us. He became flesh and bone, right? He became physical. And then he lived his life in perfect fulfillment of God's expectations. That doesn't necessarily mean that we know God in its fullness. Like the idea of a Trinity is a Christian doctrine. We can talk about it, but it's very difficult to fully understand because there's nothing like it. There's nothing like Trinity. We say the Father and Son and the Holy Spirit, they share the nature, but they're three different persons. Now that's very difficult. We start losing words by which we can sort of explain how that exactly works. So there is the sense of unknowable, the unknown of how truly the nature is. But yet, what we do need to know, like the things that are important to us, the things that are relevant to us, we can know through the person of Jesus. So does that not kind of address both of those concerns that you have? There is a sense of the greater, the bigger, but so that we don't lose our minds completely, we have something tangible that we can practically kind of stand behind and follow.
So you agree there's something about God that is beyond human understanding, but it doesn't bother you that he actually had a son who has come to this earth in human form as Jesus?
Why would that bother me? Because see, remember, so let me cover again, like the idea of a Trinity. So there was a Son pre-existed, like his time on earth, right? So there was the Trinity was always the Trinity, right? There was the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. It's just that Son became flesh. He decided to take on flesh. He decided to leave something behind. There's this idea of kenosis. I don't know if you heard that word. It's a Greek word meaning emptying himself out. Like so, the third person of the Trinity, the Son, he emptied himself of certain divine characteristics, so to speak, so that he can take on a human body for the duration that he was on earth. So he was born as a baby, he matured, he grew, never stopping being God in nature, but yet taking on a new nature, human nature. But so that certain characteristics he had to give up of his omnipresence, for example, because he was in a body, right? And so he lived life up to about 33 years of age. Well, then he died in his human flesh, right? And then he rose in a new sort of new body, new creation, right? And he returned back to heaven to be in the presence of his Father, right? So which part of this do you think should be bothersome to us?
Well, it's a very sweet story, and I hope this won't be offensive to you, but do you think Jesus was, what ethnicity was Jesus?
What ethnicity?
Yeah.
He was born a Jew. He was born a Jew in a Jewish area. So he was raised in a Jewish family. His father and mother were from Hebrew roots.
And Jesus, what gender does Jesus have?
He was a man. He was a male. Yeah.
What sexuality?
So explain that a little bit more. So he was a man, male.
Male?
Yes.
Which gender is he attracted to?
Attracted to. What does that mean? He was attracted to. Like he would. I don't think we have enough information of who he was attracted to, but he did not take on a wife, nor did he take on any sort of romantic. Bible does not speak of any sort of romantic connections that he would have taken with any gender, so to speak. So he made himself. That wasn't maybe the priority for his life. He came to do something else. He did not engage in romantic or sexual relations.
So possibly asexual. So Jesus is a Jew, straight, asexual man, possibly. And why exactly did God choose that form to born himself or his son into? What does that mean to other ethnicity? And maybe why can't Jesus be a woman or Asian? It's just too specific to me. I think if God does have a son, it should be something beyond human form. Otherwise, it doesn't speak to everyone on earth, and that's not universal enough to me.
Okay, that's very interesting because I think we today, the Christianity is one of the religions that is most diverse in the world. If you look at religions and how they spread geographically.
Yeah, I'm not saying the religion itself is not inclusive enough, because Jesus is supposed to love everyone.
Yeah.
It's just the story itself. Like, it's clear to me it's written by some human instead of something that's beyond human.
Well, I mean, if you understand a little bit more about now we're going to the Old Testament, right? If you understand the broader story, right, of the creation, Genesis, and what God had in mind and how He selected a people for Himself, there's a sense of all-encompassing plan. But any plan that gets put in place, you have to implement it in some way, right? You have to implement it in some way. And it's just God happens to choose a certain people, Jews, and then He chooses within that nation, within that group of people, He chooses one man, or not chooses one man, but He becomes one of them to fulfill the prophecies, to fulfill a greater plan. Now He had to choose one because there was a specific point He was trying to make, right? The idea was, if you think about the sort of the overall God's plan, the idea was a fallenness of human nature, the idea that we are sinful beings, and that even when God chooses a people and gives them the law, how they should live and how they should be, and what does it mean to be righteous, what does it mean to be good or bad. The idea is that even the people who have all the instructions, they ultimately fail to follow them, right? And so it's quite actually profound, right? So let's say, this is what we see in the Bible, right? We have a group of people who are given the law, the 10 Commandments. They try really hard, but they fail, right? And ultimately God says, look, I've shown you something very important. A very important lesson is that you are sinful people. You cannot help yourselves. In fact, you are unable to repair or to deal with your own sin. I have to step in. I have to step into the creation and help you, right? And the way to do that, because another thing that God said is that sin demands a punishment. Sin demands a sacrifice. And so what they used to do is they sacrificed animals. Almost symbolically, they would put their hands on the animals and they would just on a yearly basis, the priest would put the sin of the people onto the animal, and the animal would be sent to the wilderness as a symbolic gesture of like, we want to deal with our sins. We want our sins to be away from us. But it was just symbolic because it could not change their heart. They could not change their very nature of themselves, which was sinful, right? And so what God did by sending His Son, He did two very important things, right? he number one proved that his son Jesus was the only one who did not sin. He was able to perfectly follow God's law, so he was the fulfillment of the law, proving that this wasn't like an impossible quest, but it was possible. But more importantly, he sent someone to become the ultimate sacrifice. So it's not that Jesus just had to come and live, but he had to come, live, and die. And by dying, right, the idea is that he pays for everyone's sin. Everyone who believes in him, their sin is dealt with once and for all, right? So that as a Christian, I believe that my sin is dealt with on the cross 2,000 years ago by the Son of God, who took it upon, who never sinned, who was without sin himself, but he took my sin on him and paid for it with his death, right? And so it had to be someone. It had to be someone. Someone had to be that person. Someone had to be that sacrifice. If there were multiple people, right, it would be like, okay, well, who do I go to? Who is my sacrifice? Who is the symbol for me, right? And why would there need to be many? Because if there's only one needed, and if it's Son of God himself who comes down, there's really only one sacrifice that is needed, and that is the perfect sacrifice, right? I don't need more, because if you had more, there'll be a question, why was not one, what was one not enough? Was it somehow insufficient? No, the answer is no, it's not insufficient, it's perfect. And it's the only one needed, right? And so that's what Jesus did. So it's a legal fulfillment, right? It has legal implications that if you believe and trust in him, your sin is there on the cross. It's paid for. In return, you get his perfect righteousness. That's the kind of the transaction that happens in a court of law, in the heavenly court of law, right? And that's why one nation had to go through this sort of journey to show that they couldn't deal with the sin themselves. But out of that nation, God became a perfect sacrifice, right, to deal with it. Does that kind of make sense, right? Because that's sort of, well, I hope I've sort of tried to show that there had to be someone to do that.
Yeah, I can see how that makes sense to you, and I really respect you believe in that.
But it doesn't have to make sense to me. I'm trying to explain it in a way that I hope that I was sort of trying to answer your objections. Does that answer your objection?
I think I can understand your story better now. So you think it makes sense because it's random?
Well, no, it's not right. It's a fulfillment of a plan. It's a fulfillment of a plan in which the plan demanded that sin had a sacrifice.
Yeah, I can see that, and also it makes your life much easier if you believe, if you agree Jesus died for us. It makes you less sinful than anyone else in a way.
Not really.
No.
Not really, no. So maybe I didn't make myself clear. So it's not about... So Christians, for example, they don't think of themselves... Well, they should be less sinful. They should be, of course. If you had a change in such a profound way, your life should change, your life direction should change, and you should have less sin, therefore, from that point on. But the idea is not to boast in the fact that now you're superior to others. No, it's to boast and to point to what someone else has done for you, to boast in the Son of Jesus, the Son of God, Jesus, right? Because I, as a Christian, like, I cannot say, oh, look how great thing that I've done. To put faith is not an act of like superior activity. To put faith is an act of humility. It's an act of saying, God help me, I'm a sinner. I'm a great sinner. I cannot help myself. I've done some great, terrible things. And I know that those terrible things live inside of my heart because I've done them out of my own volition. I'm my own, I will fail. If I appeared in a court of law and people knew what's on my heart, what's on my mind, everything that I do, I would have terribly failed. I deserve hell. It is the mercy, undeserved grace and mercy. Grace, the word grace means your undeserved mercy that we don't deserve, that I don't deserve, has been given to me. So out of that thankfulness, I now have joy, and I have something new to live for, a new life. I'm given a new life, a new purpose, a new joy and a new hope, so that I know that my sin has been dealt with. Doesn't mean I'm suddenly perfect, I will never sin again. I still do fall, but I know that out of that occasional fall, I know that Jesus has dealt with even that, and that doesn't separate me from God because my faith and my trust are in Him. So it makes in some way makes life can make life worse. And the way it will make life worse is because, well, Jesus said that you will have persecution, you will have trouble. This world today is not very kind to Christians. For example, it's because the world thinks that Christians are, well, naive first of all, but also they believe in things that are fantasy, right? Humanism and sort of scientism has taken a position that if you believe in such a silly thing, something's wrong with you, right? And you don't deserve respect, right? But that's today's position. In the past, they actually put Christians on crosses, they burned them up because they refused to submit to Roman, for example, authority and law. So it's not necessarily, the idea of being a Christian is not to secure yourself a more physically comfortable and pleasurable life. No, it's a spiritual commitment with spiritual benefits, right? But in some ways, your life can actually be less pleasant. Your friends and your family might abandon you because they don't agree with your position, for example. So I don't know if that sort of makes sense at all. But it sounds like you, if I'm correct in sort of your reaction to it, it sounds like, okay, you're not convinced still. You're saying, okay, it's good for you, that's great for me. But I would question, like, which part of the things that I've said do you disagree with? Because, like, for example, the Bible itself is historical. It's a historical position, right? It describes events that have happened in history 2,000 years ago. Scholars that are not Christians, they look at the Bible, they say this is one of the best evidences we have of life in the first century Palestine, so to speak, right? We know that Jesus was a real person who lived, existed. Atheists agree with that. All scholars agree with that. What they disagree with is whether he did the miracles that he did, that he claimed that he did. Though obviously they cannot get over that fact. Obviously they don't agree with the faith position, putting their trust and belief in Jesus somehow. And the idea of going to heaven and hell, they would obviously, any spiritual aspects they would disagree with. But the historical aspects they would agree with. So can I start with there? Like, do you agree with the historical aspects of the Bible as being a record of what has happened in first century?
I don't think I have enough information to make that judgment.
It's fine to say you don't. It's fine to say it's just the way you reacted.
It could be true,
okay.
But it's not something I can prove based on what I know now.
Yeah.
I think there is a God and he wants me to be Christian. It will be more than you talking me into this. It will be more like he giving me a sign sometime when I'm on my own and it just happens. I don't disagree with what you said, but I don't think if the purpose of this conversation is try to make me a Christian, I don't think that would be enough, because I think it's deeper than just arguing and then being persuaded.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, it isn't. That wasn't the purpose. The purpose was to try and understand where you were in terms of your faith, and if you, and the reason I'm going into some of the depth here is that in answer to some of your questions, right, about why Jesus, why randomly he was selected, why this had to happen this way. How is it that we can know God versus the unknowable, right? So that's why I was going into a little bit more detail there.
Which Christianity do you believe in specifically?
Like which denomination you mean? Like, I'm not a part of any denomination. I'm just, if you ask me, like, what am I, Catholic, whatever it is, I just say, look, I'm aware, and I had a journey in my life that took me from different associations with different churches, but at this stage I would just call myself a Christian because I've learned that if I do anything more than that, there's a lot of baggage that comes with that position that I would not necessarily agree with, let's say. Cool. And so I just say I'm a Christian. I try to be as honest and faithful to what I think Bible speaks to us, and as imperfect as my own understanding of that is.
So independent Christian.
I guess you could say that, yeah. I guess you could say that. Yeah.
And which version of Bible do you believe in?
So the way you frame that question is interesting, right? So I think there are versions of the Bible. These are translations of the Bible, just like any book can be translated, and we use different interpretive. We apply different layers of interpretations onto that to make it understandable to the modern language, so to speak. I think any reasonable translations of the Bible are worthy of reading. So English Standard Version is a very good and faithful translation that actually tries to marry up the literal and the meaning sense of the words in a very good sort of combination. But so is New International Version is a fairly good, although I think it strays more towards the interpretive angle. I'm sure there are others. American Standard Version. There's Legacy Version. There's many that are. I think just picking up a Bible and reading it, I think, is a worthy exercise on its own. I think there will only be a few on the far extreme, like the Message. It's called the Message Bible, which is completely almost divorced from its original language. That I would not recommend people read, because it tries to read things into the text rather than get things out of the text. So I would steer clear from those. But most of the other versions are pretty useful to be read. Yeah. But I don't. I think you use the word believe in. I mean, I don't believe that a book is not something you believe in. It's a book is something you read and you draw knowledge, information from, so that you can meditate on what the words say, and you can find information that is beneficial to you, right? So that information just happens to contain words of God, words of Jesus that are worth pondering and meditating on. But I think I don't believe in a book. I believe in a person. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Yeah. Have you read the Bible yourself?
I guess I studied some part of it in uni, and I tried to read the one I got from some church somewhere, but I never finished it. I never read the whole thing.
Okay.
Also, I guess some people think the Old Testament is true, but the New isn't. Or someone thinks the old one is real, but the new one isn't. And also, there's all the chapters from the saints, and people argue some true, some not. I don't know which one is a universally recognized one.
You said some argues chapter from some sins. Sorry.
Just other. What is the word? So not. The gospel.
Yes.
It's not the main content of the Testament, but there are different gospel that people also read if you're Christian.
Okay. Maybe I don't know what you mean, but yeah, looking at the Bible, there's Old Testament, there's New Testament. New Testament has the four gospel accounts. I mean, all the word gospel means is good news. Evangelion, that's a Greek word for good news, and it's just basically four different explanations of Jesus' life from his contemporaries, whether they were his disciples or people who were around his disciples who recorded details about his life. And then the rest of the New Testament is letters from those disciples to the churches, or letters from Paul. So it's all are telling the same story, which is all are basically speaking the story of Jesus's life, resurrection. What does it mean for us to believe in that? Yeah. But I think, if you ever do get back into reading the Bible, I found, this is just a personal preference, and I've heard a lot of other people say that who have sort of taken the journey to get back into the Bible. I think starting with the Gospel of John can be quite a useful start, just because the language is simple, and it is at the same time, it's a simple language, but the ideas are profound, and he speaks quite a lot. So John, first of all, John was a close disciple of Jesus, and so we have some of the most intimate, you could call it, accounts of Jesus' words, his activity and interactions with people. And I found it very,
That's your favorite part.
well, I think favorite, and I think a very good sort of combination of ideas as well as events that have happened. Yeah, not to say that other gospel accounts are any less valuable. It's just it's almost like four eyewitnesses who are recalling the same events, but every eyewitness has a different angle. There's certain things that are important that are different to each one of them. So Matthew, he's trying to make those events relevant to the Jewish people. Luke, for example, he's speaking like almost like because he was a doctor by profession, and so he applies a much more scientific kind of journalistic approach, because he said, look, I've interviewed eyewitnesses, here's what they told me, and so he recalls through not his own eyes, but through the eyes of eyewitnesses who are around Jesus. And they have Mark, which is one of the shortest gospels, but Mark was also a disciple of Jesus, but he's a very kind of like machine gun, like, okay, this happened and this happened and this happened and this happened and this, and it's like a very, very kind of roller coaster kind of account. So John is just a separate one.
I see. Yeah. Thank you. I'll give you a read.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for listening to me. And again, I mean, I would just encourage you to give it a thought, to give it a think. By no means am I under any impression that I can change people's minds, but I'm here to just sort of encourage because it's important. I think if there's a God, if there's a life after death, and if God is a judge of us and He wants us to live a life in a specific way, and our eternity is at stake, I think it's worth at least being at peace and knowing whether He is worthy of your consideration or not. And that's the most important thing. Yeah.
Appreciate your belief.
Yeah. Thank you so much for stopping by and agreeing for this conversation. I really enjoyed your conversation, and thank you for the questions, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Same.